To prevent me from living poorly after starting college, my mom deposited $100,000 onto my campus meal card all at once, but when she saw the fruits and snacks I brought back for everyone to share, my low-income roommate suddenly got offended. "You're so extravagant and wasteful. You don't look like someone who knows how to manage a household at all. My mom despises girls like you." I found her reaction completely baffling, so I just pulled up my meal card transaction history to show her. These snacks weren't even that expensive. Besides, it's my money. I have the right to spend it however I want. I never expected the low-income girl to explode. She pointed at my $73 dinner receipt and shrieked, "Eating a meal this expensive just for yourself? Aren't you afraid of bad karma? Every extra cent you spend now means my brother will have to work an extra shift after he marries you. My family can't afford to worship a golden calf like you." She gave me full-body goosebumps. I immediately went to our RA and requested a dorm transfer. I never imagined she would hold such a deep grudge. Not long after, she brought her entire family to campus, forcefully kidnapped me, and dragged me back to their remote mountain village to be her brother's forced bride. There, under her brother's relentless, day and night domestic abuse, I was beaten to death in a filthy pig pen. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the exact day Chloe was berating me for spending money like water. I stood frozen, holding the bags of fruit and snacks. The stench of the pig pen was gone, and my legs hadn't been shattered by Caleb's iron rod. Looking around the dorm room, filled with the cheerful chatter of my roommates, my eyes instantly welled up with tears. I had actually been reborn. I was back to the day I brought welcome gifts for my roommates. Remembering the nightmare I had lived through in my past life, a sharp sting hit my nose. The very next second, taking advantage of the fact that Chloe hadn't returned yet, I quickly shoved the fruit and snacks into my suitcase. I swore to myself I would never have the slightest connection with that crazy woman again. But just as I was getting up to find the RA to request a room change, I ran face first into Chloe walking in. She looked at me with a dark expression, frowning impatiently. "What did you buy this time?" I gripped the hem of my shirt and quickly looked away. "And nothing." To my shock, she suddenly snatched my phone out of my hand and pressed my thumb against the sensor to unlock it. Staring at my transaction history, she shrieked, "This expensive? What kind of cake costs over $100? A cup of blended juice, and you spent $20 on it?" She shot me a look of pure disbelief. "I'm telling you, it's way too easy to take money from you spoiled little brats. Do you really think the money my brother makes in the future grows on trees?" Her words brought back a flood of memories from my past life. In my previous life, after her family kidnapped me and dragged me to the mountains, I never spent a single cent of their money. Instead, her hard-working brother forced me to sell my body to support their family. I had tried telling him that I had money, lots and lots of money. If they would just let me go, I promised to set them up for life. But after extorting a massive ransom from my mother, they locked me in a pig pen covered in filth. Chloe's mother couldn't resist mocking me. "Money always runs out eventually, but as long as we keep the goose that lays the golden eggs, we'll never have to worry about a thing. We're not stupid enough to kill the goose." They used the ransom money to renovate their old house, living a life of luxury that made the whole village jealous. But the one time I simply said I was hungry, Caleb beat my face until it was swollen beyond recognition. "Hungry, hungry, hungry. That's all you know how to do. Didn't you just eat an egg yesterday morning? You lazy, gluttonous piece of trash." That night, he grabbed a heavy farming hoe and beat me to death in the cold, freezing rain. Thinking of this, I couldn't suppress the fury burning in my chest. I snatched my phone back. I glared at Chloe with absolute venom. "It's my money, and I'll spend it however I want. It's none of your damn business." With that, I turned on my heel and marched straight toward the RA's office. Since I couldn't avoid them anyway, I wanted to see who exactly belonged in the deepest pits of hell this time around. Just like in my past life, the RA didn't give me a hard time about wanting to switch rooms. She quickly approved my request and moved me to the dorm next door. However, when I went back to my old room to pack my things, Chloe was sobbing uncontrollably in front of the other girls. Soon, my former roommates were shooting me complicated looks. "Summer, I know as outsiders we shouldn't get involved," one of them started. "But you shouldn't degrade yourself by being a gold digger, right? Chloe told us you're already engaged to her brother. The money on your meal card, her brother put that there for you, didn't he?" Listening to their baseless accusations, I froze. I couldn't believe Chloe had reached this level of shamelessness. How could she invent such a ridiculous lie? Before I could even defend myself, Chloe wiped her tears. "Please don't let me ruin the vibe in the dorm. Don't make things awkward because of me. I just feel so bad for my brother. He works so incredibly hard. Also, he can provide a stable home for the future." The girls, overcome with sympathy, immediately shot me cold glares. Having a gold digger as a roommate is seriously bad luck. I couldn't help but marvel at how right I was to switch rooms. Otherwise, I had no idea how I would have survived 4 years with these gullible idiots. Pulling my suitcase out from under the bed, I didn't want to stay a second longer. But just as Chloe asked, "Sister-in-law, where are you going?" I spun around and snapped back, I am not engaged to your brother. I don't even know who your brother is. And for the record, I'm spending the allowance money I've saved up over the years." That shut them up instantly. They all looked at Chloe in disbelief. Under their scrutinizing stares, Chloe looked uncomfortable. Her eyes turned red, and she started making her bed. The vibe in my new dorm was great. As soon as they heard I was the new transfer, they all eagerly introduced themselves and invited me to join them for lunch. I noticed a huge spread of takeout on the main table, so I offered up the fruit and snacks I had hidden in my suitcase to share. But just as we were eating and chatting excitedly, a cold voice suddenly sounded in my ear. "Sister-in-law, aren't you worried about getting fat eating all that? My brother doesn't like girls who are too heavy." I nearly jumped out of my chair. I spun around to see Chloe standing there like a ghost. This time, I was so angry I laughed. I snapped back without holding back. "None of your damn business." My new roommates also started asking who Chloe was, but Chloe acted like she didn't hear them. She stepped forward, glanced at the takeout on the table, and pointed her fingers at me. "Sister-in-law, I came to apologize, but I'm only doing this for your own good. After all, the pig we're raising for the holidays at home is already eating enough." Hearing her call me sister-in-law twice instantly sparked my roommate's curiosity. Before they could ask, I quickly cleared the air. "Chloe, I know your brother is getting older and can't find a girlfriend, but you can't just grab a random person and call them your sister-in-law, can you? Also, I have a personal trainer at the gym to manage my fitness. I don't need you worrying about it." Chloe jerked her head up in shock. "What? You spend money to eat and drink, and then spend more money to lose weight? That's not how you use money. If it's that bad, just come back to the farm with me and do some manual labor. That'll slim you down." But the dorm president, Sarah, fired back. "It's her money. She can spend it however she wants. It's none of your concern." The other girls chimed in. "Exactly. If you love worrying so much, go to Mount Rushmore. Tell Washington to move over, and you take his place." Summer already said she has nothing to do with your brother and told you to stop calling her that. "How do you have the nerve to still stand here? You're not welcome in our room. You're in the wrong place. The trash can is in the bathroom." She clearly hadn't expected her good intentions to be met with this kind of reaction. Chloe's eyes were wide with disbelief. Before anyone could physically kick her out, she shot me a venomous glare. "Sister-in-law, I didn't think you were this kind of person. You're totally fine spending my brother's money, but you treat him like some kind of sugar daddy to string along? Since that's how it is, I have nothing to hold back. I have proof that she's my sister-in-law." Saying that, she pulled out a photograph. Even though it was wrinkled from being hidden away and looked aged and yellowed, the woman standing next to her brother undeniably had my exact face. Looking at their bright smiles and the unfamiliar background, I felt completely surreal. I was absolutely certain that today was the first time I had ever met Chloe. Even if the photo was photoshopped and artificially aged, how would she even know who I was? It was so bizarre. I briefly wondered if my dad had an illegitimate daughter running around. I was too stunned to speak for a long time. Then, Chloe's icy voice broke the silence. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue?" Seeing her smug, confident expression, I felt like I was choking. But even then, Sarah didn't just take her word for it. She turned to another roommate. "Mia, you're a graphic design major. Take a look. Is this photoshopped?" Mia immediately grabbed the photo. She stared at it for a long time but couldn't figure it out. Finally, she scratched her head awkwardly. "Hee, I skip class way too much. I can't really tell, but it's fine. I know a senior who does this professionally. I'll snap a pic and send it to him." However, she quickly received a reply that shocked everyone. "The photo is real. No signs of Photoshop." At the same time, a triumphant smile spread across Chloe's face. "See? Still going to deny you're my sister-in-law? How do you explain the photo then?" I really didn't know how to explain it, because the person in the photo definitely wasn't me. Even in my past life, I had never seen this woman before. Seeing that I wasn't reacting, Chloe scanned my roommates, a sneer on her lips. "Now do you see what kind of person your new roommate is?" But the response she got was a freezing cold order from Sarah. "Get out. Our room does not welcome you." Chloe's face stiffened. She immediately turned and stormed out. "You don't know what's good for you. You've messed with the wrong person. You'll regret this." Over the next few days, my roommates tacitly agreed to never bring the incident up again. They continued to invite me to meals and gossip sessions as usual. Chloe didn't bother me again either. I thought the whole farce was over and I could finally start my college life. But one afternoon, when all my roommates were out on dates, I was walking alone to the dining hall. On the main path, I bumped into an old woman peering around shiftily. As soon as I saw her face, I immediately turned around to run. But Chloe's mother locked eyes on me and lunged, grabbing my wrist in a vice grip. She looked me up and down, her eyes finally settling on my hips, clicking her tongue and shaking her head. "Humph, so skinny. Who knows if you'll even be able to give me a grandson?" I glared at her icily. "Let go of me. I don't know you." The old woman suddenly pinched my butt hard. "You uneducated little brat. Is that how you talk to your mother-in-law? You might not know me, but I know you. Your name is Summer, right? Just hearing that name, I know you're high maintenance. I think you should change your name to something more traditional, like Martha. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Earlier, I had thought they just mistook me for the woman in the photo, but the fact that she knew my name meant it wasn't a mistake. What the hell was going on? The tangled mess of thoughts made my brain short-circuit for a second. I immediately yanked my hand away, wishing I had 8 legs so I could run away from this nightmare faster. But the old woman got straight to the point. I heard from Chloe that you're a money-burning waste of space, but I have no choice. My son is dead set on you, so I'll give it to you straight. If you want to marry my son, the dowry has to include a car. My son has loved cars since he was a boy. It can't be anything under 50 grand. I already looked at houses. It's a nice little suburban home in our county. It needs at least 6 bedrooms so Chloe doesn't have to share a bed with her brother anymore. I heard there's a discount. We can get it all cash for about 700 grand. Listening to her ramble in my ear, I instantly flashed back to the horrors of my past life. I immediately started screaming for the campus security guards, but Chloe stepped out, blocking the guard's path. She pulled out her phone and played a video. In the video, under the old oak tree at the entrance to their village, I was wearing a pure white wedding dress, kneeling on one knee before Caleb. I looked pathetic, begging Caleb to marry me. Finally, after I cried and pleaded relentlessly, Caleb accepted the proposal. And the ecstatic woman in the video looked and sounded exactly like me. Even when Caleb said those gross, cheesy romantic lines, he used my name. Just like when they kidnapped me in my past life, she used a few words to completely dispel the guard's suspicions. She smiled and walked over to the old woman. Mom, what do you think? Is she to your liking? The old woman shook her head, sucking her teeth. Average. Just then, Caleb arrived, driving his beat-up van. Seeing that I was about to fall back into the hell of my past life, I quickly pulled out my phone to call 911. But Caleb sprinted over, snatched my phone, and smashed it on the ground under his boot. Chloe laughed, throwing a smug look my way. Well, still think your money makes you better than everyone else? Why don't you get on your knees and beg me right now? Maybe if I feel bad for you, I'll toss you some scraps. Despair swallowed me whole. It felt like I was constantly trapped in a dense fog. But just as they started dragging me toward the van, my eyes widened. Suddenly, it all made sense. I think I finally understood what was going on. The next second, I yelled at the mother and son. Hearing my words, the mother and son froze. Caleb gritted his teeth and slapped Chloe hard across the face. Chloe, is that how you talk to your classmates? Is this how Mom and I raised you? Chloe was stunned by the slap. A trickle of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth, but Caleb wasn't satisfied. He grabbed her by the hair and punched her in the face. Blood immediately sprayed from her nose. As she wailed and sobbed under the beating, the old woman turned to look at me. Are you sure you have a way to make Chloe marry your brother? Given the desperate situation, I had no choice but to use my brother, who was overseas, as a shield. I just hoped that when he found out, he'd feel sorry enough for his little sister not to accidentally kill me. Thinking of this, I nodded firmly. You know my family is rich, but as a girl, I can't inherit the business. My brother is different. Not only is he more capable than me, but he also built a publicly traded company from scratch. He's definitely going to take over the family business in the future. The old woman's eyes gleamed greedily. She immediately glared at Caleb. Beat her hard. She almost cost our family a one-way ticket to the top, and she still claims to be some main character with a script. I think she's a jinx. The words main character made my expression freeze. Just a moment ago, I had wondered if Chloe had superpowers or was an alien, but reality was even more absurd than I imagined. She was a time traveler with a system. No wonder she could casually pull out evidence to deceive everyone. I wanted to see how she planned to thrive in a family that sucked the marrow from their own bones. When I looked back, Caleb had already beaten Chloe half to death. The old woman pressed me again about my earlier promise. I nodded with absolute certainty. Of course, my parents spoil me the most. If he wants to bring someone home, it just takes one word from me. It's just that. I looked at Chloe with a feigned expression of difficulty. You know, wealthy families value capability over looks. Chloe is just too pretty. I'm afraid people might think she's just a trophy wife. If rumors start spreading, it could affect my family's stock price. Hearing this, Chloe, who had just regained consciousness, gasped in shock. Bullshit. Mom, Caleb, don't listen to her. She's lying. I'm the only one who knows the plot. You have to listen to me. Tie her up, and we'll have more money than we can spend. If she hadn't accidentally died in her past life, I wouldn't have. At that moment, I finally realized that Chloe had been reborn just like me. But facing her impotent rage, I covered my mouth in feigned concern. Chloe, kidnapping is a felony. Are you trying to help them or ruin them? That comment made Caleb frown deeply. He walked toward Chloe again. Still spewing nonsense at a time like this? I think Summer makes a lot of sense. Instead of focusing on dressing up, you should be figuring out how to be worthy of a billionaire's wife. With that, he grabbed a handful of mud from the ground and smeared it all over Chloe's face. No more makeup for you from now on. Do you think my money grows on trees? Seeing her face covered in foul-smelling mud, Chloe completely broke down. After all, despite her poor background, she was incredibly vain. In my past life, all the money I made from selling my body went straight to buying her makeup. Seeing her hysterical breakdown, I finally let out a sigh of relief. It seemed my gamble had paid off. Everything that happened made me realize that she didn't actually like me. In fact, she despised me. The only reason she wanted to kidnap me was to wring every last drop of value out of me. Now, all of that was going to backfire spectacularly on her. It was time for me to personally send this entire family straight to hell. That day, even though I had temporarily defused the crisis, Chloe's family still didn't trust me enough to let me go. They took me with them. We arrived at that familiar, remote mountain village. But they didn't mistreat me like they did before. Instead, they treated me like a literal god of wealth. Hee. Before Chloe gets engaged to your brother, you can just stay with us. We might be poor, but we'll never let you go hungry. Looking at the table, there was a whole roast chicken, something this family usually only ate on holidays. I didn't hold back, grabbing a drumstick and tearing into it. Chloe immediately shot me a venomous look, her knuckles cracking as she clenched her fists. When she thought I wasn't looking, she whined to the old woman, "Mom, I'm hungry." But as she rested her hand on the old woman's shoulder, Caleb slapped it away. "Have you perfected the posture I taught you? I've told you a million times, rich wives have to be elegant in every movement. Look at yourself. You slouch when you stand, you sprawl when you sit, and you have the nerve to say you're hungry? Get back to practicing." Over the next few days, Caleb forced Chloe to learn all sorts of etiquette. Even the exact number of times she had to chew her food before swallowing was strictly monitored. It made me marvel at how miserable life would be if someone actually had to live like that. Then, one night, after Caleb beat her again, Chloe hung herself. Luckily, I discovered her in time, and the old woman managed to cut her down with great effort. When Chloe opened her eyes, she was ecstatic, shouting with a manic laugh, "Yes, I finally got reborn again." But when she met Caleb's vicious glare, the light instantly died in her eyes. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pleading, but Caleb dragged her away to the pigpen like a dead dog, still spouting nonsense. "You're completely hopeless." Amidst her agonizing screams, Caleb broke his stick over her once again. A week later, Chloe, reformed by Caleb's beatings, appeared before me again. Looking at her stiff posture and the forced, polite smile plastered on her face, I nodded in satisfaction. "Not bad. Now you actually look the part of a CEO's wife." The mother and son wept tears of joy. "Wonderful. All my hard work these past few days wasn't for nothing." Caleb grinned from ear to ear. "That means I'll have the money to marry Widow Lee from the next village." Hearing the name Widow Lee, I could hardly believe my ears. In my past life, when Widow Lee heard Caleb had gotten married, she died of a broken heart. It was from that point on that Caleb started taking his rage out on me. It turned out everything was connected, but what I never expected was that before I even told them to contact my brother, Widow Lee suddenly showed up at the door, pointing directly at me and screaming, "You piece of trash. I hope you get sliced into 1,000 pieces. Just to steal my Caleb, you actually sent men. You sent men." Suddenly, it was as if all her energy evaporated. She collapsed onto the ground and began sobbing uncontrollably. Caleb turned pale and frantically asked her what happened. At that moment, Chloe tilted her head toward me, a barely noticeable smirk playing on her lips. Encouraged by Caleb's concern, Widow Lee cried even harder. Soon, Caleb noticed the bloodstains on her pants. His knuckles turned white as he clenched his fists. "Luna, don't cry. Tell Caleb, what happened? You're bleeding so much." But Widow Lee put on a brave, long-suffering face. She looked up at Caleb, shaking her head incessantly. "Caleb, maybe this is just my fate. I'm afraid I can never be with you in this lifetime." Saying that, she turned her tear-filled eyes toward me, her voice trembling. "I'm dirty now. I'm not good enough for you anymore. But I didn't want this to happen. Last night, a bunch of men broke into my house, and without a word, She threw herself into Caleb's arms, wailing helplessly, "Caleb, I'm ruined." Her words made Caleb's whole body tremble. The veins on his forehead pulsed as he glared at me. "Summer, I thought you were a benefactor coming to help our family. But now, what the hell did you do to Luna?" Blinding rage consumed Caleb. Even when the old woman tried to intervene, he shoved her aside without a second thought. She sat on the ground, slapping her thighs and wailing, "Caleb, don't do something stupid. Summer is our golden ticket. Whether we ever make it out of here depends entirely on her." But Caleb snapped back coldly, "To hell with the golden ticket. She touched my Luna. Even if she were God Almighty, I'd kill her." Looking at the smile Luna flashed at Chloe, it didn't take a genius to figure out who orchestrated this. I quickly cried out, "Brother-in-law, don't be rash. I swear I didn't do this." "Even if you don't care about Chloe, Don't you want the mansion you were going to give Luna? What about the $5 million dowry? Since this has already happened, shouldn't we focus on compensating Luna as much as possible? Believe me, this has nothing to do with me. Hearing this, Luna instantly stopped crying. Her eyes widened as she stared at Caleb. What mansion? What dowry? Why don't I know anything about this? Caleb, wait, don't hit her. But Caleb acted as if he had seen through everything. He grabbed a sickle used for cutting pig feed and slowly walked toward me. Do you think you can fix everything with your filthy money? Luna, don't try to stop me. I know exactly what I'm doing. I swore I would protect you forever. Since someone dared to lay a hand on you, she's going to pay with her life. At this point, I reached out to Luna in absolute despair. Luna, save me, Caleb sneered. Now you're scared? Too late. Even if you get on your knees and beg Luna now, it won't change. But before he could finish his sentence, he froze in disbelief. He reached around to the back of his head, his hand coming away covered in blood. When he turned around, Luna was trembling, holding a heavy farming hoe. Meeting Caleb's complex gaze, she immediately shrank back, muttering, Caleb, you should have let me finish. Before he could even process that, the old woman smashed a rock into his face. She was crying as she spoke. Caleb, don't hate your mother. I just didn't want you to make a mistake you'd regret forever. You went too far. The next second, he completely blacked out. Chloe watched in absolute shock, her eyes full of confusion. How did this happen? Both the old woman and Luna glared at her simultaneously. You shameless little bitch, just wait until we get home. By the time the family drove the beat-up van to the hospital, Caleb had missed the critical window for resuscitation and fell into a vegetative state. The hallway echoed with the wails of the old woman and Luna. I quickly offered words of comfort. The doctor only said the chances of him waking up are slim, but he didn't say it was impossible. Don't worry, medical technology is so advanced now. Caleb will be fine. Plus, my family has money. We can get him the best treatments available. But Chloe let out a sharp laugh. What good is money now? You can only fool these uneducated old hags with that talk. Seriously, do you people have any brains? I really don't know why an independent, alpha female protagonist like me has to be stuck with a pathetic family like this. The next second, a resounding slap landed across her face. The old woman gritted her teeth viciously. What is that supposed to mean? You ungrateful wretch. You wish your brother would never wake up, don't you? Luna lunged at her like a maniac, clawing at her hair. Chloe, why didn't you tell me Caleb was planning to marry me, and that your family was about to become filthy rich? You made me frame Summer, and now Caleb's a vegetable. I'll kill you. That day, if I hadn't stepped in to pull those two women off her, Chloe probably would have died right there in the hospital. Because of my helpful reminder, the old woman finally let me use a phone. But she didn't forget to shoot me a venomous warning. Don't try anything funny. I nodded, took the phone, and sent a picture of Chloe, the fiancé I personally picked out for you. Right after, I attached an emoji I had never used before. This was a secret signal I had established with him. When I was 13, I was kidnapped. My brother nearly died rescuing me. When I visited him in the hospital, he broke down in tears. That was when we agreed on this specific emoji. He told me that if I was ever in danger, I should send him that exact sticker. In my past life, I had done the same thing, but the village was simply too remote. By the time my brother brought his men, I had already been chopped to pieces and fed to the pigs. This time, it was their turn to taste hell. Soon, I received a reply from my brother. She's very beautiful. I'm very pleased. Hearing Luna read the text out loud, the old woman snatched the phone away, ecstatic. From now on, you'll stay here and take care of my son. Don't worry, you're a benefactor to the family. We won't mistreat you. Even Luna chimed in, saying she didn't mind if Caleb had another woman to keep him company. Their treacherous, greedy faces looked exactly the same as when they collected the ransom in my past life. They really never change. Soon, the wedding between Chloe and my brother was scheduled, and I was locked in the family's root cellar. On the day of the wedding, the old woman and Luna attended dressed to the nines as Chloe's family. When she saw my brother in his tailored suit, Chloe, wearing her pristine white wedding dress, froze. The next second, her eyes welled up. If I knew Summer had such a hot brother, why did I even bother with all that other stuff? When I heard her brother was in his 30s and unmarried, I thought he'd be some greasy old creep. Now look at him. Isn't he the perfect match for a main character like me? After a brief moment of regret, she smiled and walked gracefully toward my brother. Hello, my husband-to-be. I'm your future wife, Chloe. Meeting her beaming gaze, my brother let out a soft chuckle. Well, I look forward to your guidance, Miss Chloe. At that moment, his gentle face was tight with suppressed rage. In front of all the guests at the wedding of the century, he announced Chloe's status. Hearing the endless stream of congratulations, Chloe blushed deeply. She eagerly motioned for the flower girl to bring the rings, but my brother gently put a hand on her shoulder. No rush. I have a surprise for you. As Chloe looked on in astonishment, a fleet of helicopters flew over the venue, raining down a sea of flower petals. Then, millions of dollars worth of fireworks exploded in the sky, reflecting in Chloe's awestruck eyes. Watching Chloe completely immersed in her fairy tale, my brother instinctively checked his watch, frowning with intense irritation. It wasn't until the entire fireworks show ended and the flower girl approached that he finally, casually, knelt before Chloe, and at that exact moment, he received the signal he was waiting for. Under Chloe's tear-filled gaze, he looked at his executive assistant in the crowd. Then, he turned back to Chloe, speaking with deep affection. "Chloe, will you be my wife?" The next second, Chloe eagerly opened her mouth to speak. But before she could make a sound, the giant screens behind them began blasting the sounds of explicit moans. Chloe's face drained of all color. By the time the bodyguards escorted me to the car, I was already reading the news reports on my phone. That day, due to the exposure of Chloe's scandalous private life, the entire wedding ended as a massive public humiliation. At that moment, they had been just one step away from rising from the ashes to become billionaires. Chloe was dragged away by the old woman and Luna. Soon after, the precious only son the old woman adored flatlined in the hospital. I kindly called the police on Chloe's behalf, but the mountain village they lived in was simply too remote. By the time the police arrived, she had already been chopped to pieces and fed to the pigs by the two women. However, the police found some evidence at the scene. A manhunt was launched for the old woman and Luna. When they found the old woman, she had already hung herself from a crooked tree outside the village. Her death was gruesome, her eyes wide with unyielding bitterness. It was as if she was repenting for personally killing her own son. As for Luna, she was quickly apprehended by the police while trying to flee. She was prosecuted and sentenced to death. After recounting all this, my brother suddenly put down the newspaper he had specially bought and looked at me with a cold smirk. "Now that all that is settled, shouldn't we settle our own accounts?" His dark aura terrified me, and I turned to run, but he pulled me into his arms. His voice trembled violently. "Summer, don't be afraid. Your big brother will protect you for the rest of your life." Saying that, he pointed at the scrape on my arm. "Does it hurt?" I had seen that exact expression of panic 6 years ago. Feeling completely safe, I shook my head. "It doesn't hurt. Everything was finally in the past." After the storm passed, the sunlight instantly poured in,